Tyler from Aspire Sports, and I'm going to be giving you my Week 15 wide receiver rankings. These wide receivers will help you win this week. So if you have any questions, leave it in the comments below. If you like this content, please like and subscribe. Really appreciate it. And without further ado, let's get into it. So the first one here is going to be pretty obvious. Davante Adams. I mean, do I need to say anything else? Best wide receiver in the NFL, in my opinion, with one of the best quarterbacks. Just a dream situation. Also played Carolina, who their cornerbacks are not very good. There's nobody that can cover Adams. So Adams is a bona fide stud. The next one is pretty obvious as well. Not going to spend much time. Tyreek Hill. You wouldn't be surprised. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Tyreek Hill went for 250 yards and 3 touchdowns again this week. Would anybody be surprised? I wouldn't. So Tyreek Hill. The next one here as well is just these ones are pretty obvious. Like DeAndre Hopkins. Like he's had 3 tough matchups in a row and he's produced. Now we get to Darius Slay, who Darius Slay has not been good these past couple of weeks in coverage, has been getting killed. This week I expect the same. I expect him to really crush Darius Slay in coverage. He should be able to have a big game this game. So DeAndre Hopkins, number 3. And then number 4, after this one, it gets a little interesting. You can move guys around, but I feel like these should be the consensus 1 through 4. Stephon Diggs. Stephon Diggs leads the NFL in targets, leads the NFL in catches, is just a target machine. The matchup's pretty good as well, so start Stephon Diggs. These should be the 4 guys. If you have all 4 of them, then what are you doing? Playing in a one-man league? Like, you should not have all 4 of these guys. So if you have one of these guys, 2 of these guys, start them over everybody else. These are your top 4. And number 5, we have A.J. Brown. I feel like this is a pretty good start as well. The only concern I have is just his ceiling being capped by this game being a blowout. I expect them, especially if Stafford doesn't play, which he didn't practice today as of Thursday. So Thursday he did not practice. Not looking good. So I expect them to just crush him. So it's going to cap A.J. Brown's ceiling a little bit, but he still proved last week in a blowout win that he can produce in a blowout win. So I'm not concerned. A.J. Brown, number 5. Coming in at number 6 is going to be Keenan Allen. Now, I am a tiny bit concerned about the injury. Just a little bit, just because it's a short week. If this was a full week, I wouldn't be concerned about it at all. But with it being a short week, I'm a tiny bit concerned. I hope it's not going to be a Julio Jones situation where he goes in, comes out constantly throughout the game. I don't think that will happen, but if you have some of these guys on the list a little bit lower than him and you want to play them over him, then feel free. So, Keenan Allen, he's just seeing too much of a workload, though. Is too involved in this passing attack. So coming in at number 7 is Calvin Ridley, who's been phenomenal this season. The only issue is injuries. He's had a couple of injuries that's kind of held him back a little bit, but other than that, he's been phenomenal. Tampa Bay right now are giving up the 11th most fantasy points to the wide receiver, and lately they just haven't been that good against the pass. They get, obviously, Atlanta this week. Calvin Ridley should have a solid game, and since Julio Jones has went out of the lineup with an injury again, Calvin Ridley is 7th amongst wide receivers in fantasy points, 6 in targets, so playing with confidence, he's a stud. Coming in at number 8 is going to be Allen Robinson. I love Allen Robinson this week. Plays Minnesota. Since Mitchell Trubisky has taken over the starting role, Allen Robinson is 4th in fantasy points, 1st in targets, 2nd in receptions, 1st in end zone targets and touchdowns. So he's seeing a ton of volume right now. Plays Minnesota. Minnesota has been better against the pass rather than the previous half of the season, the first half, but they're not good. He can beat up the secondary easily. I expect him to. He's going to have a solid game. Allen Robinson at 8. Coming in at number 9 is going to be Justin Jefferson. So since week 6, really when he put, I feel like the fantasy world on notice when everybody started to play him a lot. Since week 6, he's wide receiver number 4, and that's with a bye week in there. So he's a stud. Yes, it's a tougher matchup. He did beat him up last time. It's still a tougher matchup. Like Chicago's giving up, I believe, the 4th fewest or 5th fewest points to the wide receiver position this year. So it's a tougher matchup. But it's going to be Kyle Fuller. He's going to be on Adam Thielen. Not going to be shadowing him, but that's where Adam Thielen runs majority of his routes on Kyle Fuller's side. So Justin Jefferson will at least be able to avoid that, and the other cornerbacks for Chicago are beatable. So Justin Jefferson, number 9. Coming in at number 10 is going to be Brandon Aiyuk. Maybe the first big surprise, right? Like, where's DK at? Let me try to sell you on Brandon Aiyuk. Maybe you don't need selling, but if you do need some selling, why he's a top 10 play this week, let me tell you. So, Now, DK plays Washington. It's a tough matchup, so he kind of jumps DK in that regards, but Brandon Aiyuk. So, over the course of the season, he's a rookie wide receiver, right? Over the course of the season, games that he's played, he's 14th in points per game at the wide receiver position with 13.3. Now, what I've done is I've taken the sample size from week 7 when he's kind of gotten a feel, is in the offense, no offseason, that kind of stuff. So, from week 7 on, he is averaging 16.9 fantasy points per game. That's 5 games. In those 5 games, he's averaging 16.9 fantasy points per game, which on a per game basis is third best amongst wide receivers in fantasy this year. In those games, he's played Washington, Buffalo, New England, New Orleans. This week gets Dallas. Dallas is giving up the 5th most fantasy points to the wide receiver position, and he's going to be without Deebo Samuel. In those 5 games that I talked about, he's averaging 16.9 fantasy points per game. He's averaging 11.2 targets per game, 8.4 receptions per game, and 99 yards per game. That is crazy numbers. And this week, in a dream matchup against Dallas, in my opinion, yes, he is a top 10 play this week. I love him this week over guys like, yes, DK, who has a terrible matchup, and I'll go ahead and talk about him in a second, but Brandon Aiyuk at number 10. And coming in at number 11 is going to be DK Metcalf. He's playing Washington. Now, why did I put Brandon Aiyuk over him? It's simple. Number 1, they haven't looked good besides the Jets, right? In the past month, they have not. Now DK's been playing pretty well, but this offense just has not looked good. Gets Washington. Washington right now is giving up the 4th fewest points to the wide receiver position. This year, they've only allowed 2 receivers to go over the 100-yard mark. So, if you think he's going to get over that mark, then sure, but only 2 wide receivers. I think he's obviously still a wide receiver 1 in a 12-man league. He's just more in the back end rather than the front end. So, me personally, I don't like DK that much this week. I still much rather play him over Tyler Lockett, but he gets a little bit downgrade due to the matchup. And remember, this is a team that's going from West Coast to East Coast playing a 1 o'clock game. Those teams do not fare well, so I don't like DK that much this week. DK at number 11. At number 12 is going to be Terry McLaurin. Now, this depends if Alex Smith or Haskins plays. If Haskins plays, honestly, I would move him up a little bit more. If Alex Smith plays, I'd probably move him down. Let me explain why. So, with Haskins, is only a 4-game sample size, but with Haskins, he's averaging 9.7 targets per game, 6.5 receptions, and 96.7 receiving yards per game. With Alex Smith under center, he's averaging 4.7 receptions per game, 7.5 targets, and 64.2 yards per game. Why is that? Well, it's pretty obvious. Alex Smith just is conservative, right? Haskins, he doesn't care. He's not that good of a quarterback. Alex Smith will give your team the better chance to win, but Haskins is much better for fantasy because he'll push the ball downfield, actually take some deep shots, and sling it to Terry when he's covered. And I like that for fantasy. So hopefully he plays this week. If he plays, I do like him a little bit more, but if Alex Smith plays, he's in this range for me for sure. It just depends on who the quarterback is. Terry McLaurin, number 12. Coming in at number 13 is going to be T.Y. Hilton. I love T.Y. Hilton this week. I feel like he's a little bit too low, but after I went and looked at his numbers, I feel like this is a good spot. So, plays Houston this week. Houston's terrible defensively everywhere, basically. Since week 12, he's wide receiver 3. Prior to that, he was wide receiver 89. Now, since week 12, in this span, he has 17 catches and 4 touchdowns. So that's a really high, really efficient rate. Now, sure, he could definitely get a touchdown this week in a very good matchup. This is as good as it comes matchup wise. But that's the reason why he's here rather than higher, just because he's 22nd, I believe, in targets over that span. So it's not a big workload. He's just catching touchdowns. If that continues, then yes, he moves up. But if he has a decent game where he's seeing some targets and possibly catches a touchdown, he's good in this range just because of the matchup and how he's been playing as of late. So T.Y. Hilton, 13. Coming in at number 14 is going to be Adam Thielen. I know last time these two teams played, he had a good game, but he also caught 4 passes, 43 yards, and 2 touchdowns. That's not going to happen again. Maybe it does, but it's highly unlikely that happens again. Maybe he has more receptions, more yards, but he's going to see Kyle Fuller majority of the snaps. So Kyle Fuller in the season has a 51% catch rate. He's allowing a 51% catch rate, which is 7th best amongst cornerbacks in the league this season. He's also allowing a .18 fantasy points per route ran, and that's 10th best amongst cornerbacks this season. So he's not allowing that much fantasy production. Right now, Chicago, I believe, is giving up the 5th fewest fantasy points per game to the wide receivers. So it's a very tough matchup. I know last time they produced, I think Justin Jefferson produces this week, but Adam Thielen is going to need some touchdowns to be relevant. He could certainly get that done because he's been doing it all season, but that's why he's in this range. He's a wide receiver 2 for me this week, Adam Thielen. Coming in at number 15 and 16 are Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp. I'm kind of putting them together, and here's why I'm a little concerned about them this weekend. It is a beautiful matchup. If you look on paper, it's a great matchup for both of them, but they're favored by 17.5 points. Like, do you think the Jets stand a chance? Because I don't. I think the Jets get crushed like they did last week, 40-3, 41-3, whatever the final score was. I expect basically like the same here. And in games that they have won, the Rams, the games that they have won by more than 17.5 points, Jared Goff is averaging 27 passing attempts in those games. These two guys are averaging 10.3 and 10.4 points per game, which on a per game basis amongst wide receivers, that puts them outside of the top 25. So I just don't think that there's volume here. They're going to have to be very efficient in that first half, because I think in the second half, they will have the game won and they'll just run the ball. So you're going to have to rely on a touchdown here. They can certainly get it done. They could certainly have a big first half just off of a couple plays alone. But I just think that their ceiling is very capped due to the matchup. They're going to crush the Jets, in my opinion. I would be amazed if the Jets somehow make this a competitive game, because I don't see how they move the ball. So with that being said, Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, 15-16. Coming out number 17 is Chris Godwin. Chris Godwin I would feel comfortable playing him over Woods and Kupp, but I just can't do it in my rankings because I told everyone to play him last week, and he didn't have a good week. This week against Atlanta, it's a very good matchup. Now, it all comes down to Brady. In games that Brady has over 20 fantasy points and Chris Godwin has played in, Chris Godwin is averaging 14.2 fantasy points. That is 12th best amongst wide receivers, okay? So it all comes down to Brady. He's averaging 6.8 catches, and 84 yards in those games. It all comes down to Brady. Hopefully Brady can get it done. I think he does, so I think Chris Godwin is going to be a good play, but I told everyone to play AB last week, Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, and it was a flop. So I want to put him higher, but I'm just a little concerned for that reason. Which Brady shows up? I think good Brady, but you decide, is it good Brady or bad Brady? Chris Godwin, 17. Coming in at number 18 is going to be Robbie Anderson. And Robbie Anderson has been really good all season, especially where you got him in your draft. He's honestly one of the better draft picks of the season in terms of value, along with like Stephon Diggs, great value there as well. But Robbie Anderson has been very good this season as well. On the season right now, he's wide receiver 18. Very good. This week, wide receiver 18 in rankings. On the season, he is 7th in targets, so he's seeing a ton of targets. The issue is he's just not scoring touchdowns. If he was scoring touchdowns, he'd be like a must start this week. I don't think he sees shadow coverage from Jair Alexander. I don't even know if they really shadow, and if they're going to shadow somebody, it's going to be probably DJ Moore. So he's not going to see shadow coverage. They should, I'd assume, be down in this game, so kind of have to play catch up. He'll be targeted a decent amount, especially in PPR. He's a really good play. But in season long, like your standard leagues, he's still a good play. Robbie Anderson, 18. Coming in at number 19 is going to be Amari Cooper. It's a tough matchup this week for sure for Amari Cooper. But in games that Andy Dalton has played in full, has played, started, finished, he is wide receiver 6 in those games. Wide receiver 6. In those games, he is 7th in yards and 9th in targets. So he has a pretty good floor in this game, which is a tough matchup, but solid floor. In my opinion, he's a very good wide receiver too. And yes, I'd play him over Michael Thomas. And you're probably wondering, where is Michael Thomas at this point? I'm telling you, do you feel good about a right-handed Tim Tebow throwing him the ball in a tough matchup? I don't. So that's why Michael Thomas isn't here. And coming in at number 20 is going to be Deontay Johnson. And now, I'm a Steelers fan, so a little bit homerish, but let me say this. These are stats, okay? In the full games that he's played, he's missed a couple of games due to injury, left games early due to injury. In the full games that he has played, he is wide receiver 8 and 2nd in targets in those games. 2nd in targets with 107 targets in those games. That is one behind Devontae Adams in targets. He is seeing so much volume. Now, Big Ben is there. It's a lot of short passes, so it's not great in terms of fantasy, but still, wide receiver 8, that's a lot of games. That's a decent sample size as well. This week gets Cincinnati. The only concern I have is how competitive is this game? Steelers offense has not been great. The only two people I feel comfortable playing are Juju or Deontay. I don't think this is a very competitive game, but at the same time, pretty solid floor for Deontay Johnson. I do think he's a very solid wide receiver too. So with that being said, if you do enjoy this content, please hit that like and subscribe button. We'd really appreciate it. We will be live Thursday night from 7 to 8:30 answering all the questions you have. And also, we're going to do 4 live shows this weekend due to the Saturday game. So if you have any questions, tune in, ask away. Thank you for watching, and have a great day. Good luck this weekend, everybody.